Hi, my name is Eddie Santos. I'm a retired Army Sergeant with more than 23 years, and I am a disabled vet. I've been all over the place trying to get assistance for my disability. And as for right now, the only person that seemed to help me out was when I went to the congressman's office, tried to get some assistance for him to help me get my prosthetic leg fixed. So finally the congressman had me the opportunity to go to Palo Alto in San Jose, California, where they finally fixed my prosthetic. If you need help and you seem to not get it anywhere, you should go see our congressman with the people he has there to help us veterans get what we need and what we deserve for doing our time in service for the freedom of our island and for our country.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
A lot has changed overnight, but Buick and GMC's commitment to you remains the same. We understand you want to feel safe, so we're offering current owners complimentary OnStar Crisis Assist services. Should you need a vehicle, we're offering 0% financing for up to 84 months with deferred payment options for 120 days. Plus, you may have the option to shop online and take delivery at home. Visit our websites for the help you need.
Visit AutoSpot GMC today.
Funerals actually take a lot more planning than I expected. With us using island cuisine for the first time, of course we were iffy, but once they came and showed us their service, their food, tasted their food and everything, we definitely use them again because their service and food is just awesome.
The pompous
and elite wish we go away
because we are
real and direct.
No interest owns us,
And we have no interest but
the truth. Together we are exposing
corruption.
Together we will reform criminal justice.
Together
We are fighting violence
Against women and children.
we here at
Kandit
will shine the light
on every corner of darkness.
Together, we are giving a voice
to the voiceless.
and forgotten.
Stay lit.
Together.
Together,
Together.
together,
we are giving a voice to the voiceless and forgotten.
We are Kandit News Group.
I'll ride with the horses, I'll swim through the sea, I'll climb to the mountain tops, won't you come follow me? I'll take time to notice all that I see, and after I've come so far, you know where I'll be. I'll fly away, fly away, fly away, fly away, oh. I'll fly away, fly away, voices are free. At the end of the journey, where all is complete, they'll all wonder where I've gone, but you know where I'll be. I'll fly away, fly away, fly away, fly away home. I'll fly away, fly away, fly away, fly away home. Our dreams last forever. For all that we know, the roads come together, and that's where we'll go.
With many accolades and celebrations.
as well as the people of Guam, can now get a better understanding of the actions of our government. And for the record, I would like to read the questions that have been transmitted. The Government of Guam response plan to combat COVID-19, a timeline of steps taken by Guam to respond to COVID-19, an understanding of the logic, rationale, and steps behind the procurement of quarantine and isolation facilities and costs associated with each and all facilities, standard operating procedures, staffing, and duties of detailed personnel for quarantine facilities and isolation facilities. The $117.9 million budget from the funds allocated to Guam from the CARES Act. How were these numbers derived? How were requests from agencies prioritized? And the status of the updated Guam pandemic plan. The Government of Guam recovery plan from COVID-19, process behind the creation of the tiered P Core approach, the 20 million small business relief program as outlined in the budget submitted for the CARES Act fund, the scope of work and plan of action for GIDA's economic impact study as outlined in the budget submitted for the CARES Act fund, and the plan of action for the Government of Guam in response to revenue reductions. I had also received, colleagues from the White House, a document outlining their support of our people of Guam. Colleagues, these documents outline over $785,836,000 that has been allocated or awarded to Guam in response to COVID-19. And as such, colleagues, I have also included the following items for them to present status updates to the 35th Guam legislature. Support received from the Trump administration in response to COVID-19. The $10.1 million that has been obligated to by FEMA as of April 27, 2020. The $736,000 in CARES Act funding that has been awarded to the Guam Department of Administration. The status of the municipal liquidity facility lending program to ensure funding for essential services. The $2.6 million in COVID-19 funding through HUD. The $12 million from the U.S. Department of Interior grants. These require you to apply for grants, and it seems that the administration has applied for this DOI grant and they've applied for it and they've been awarded the funds. So the clarification of what these funds will be used for. The 1.5 in dislocated worker grants to Guam, the 1.5 million in dislocated worker grants to Guam. the $3 billion from USDA that can be used to purchase fresh produce, dairy and meat products. I want to also share with you that the $2.7 million in Federal Transit Administration funds to help public transportation here on Guam. I also want to include on that the Department of Veteran Affairs. The Department of Veteran Affairs provides services based on the request by the states and territories. Has this request been made already? And the $2.9 million in funds through the U.S. Department of Justice for Guam. Colleagues, I have been working closely with our federal counterparts, and I would like to thank them for their support. And I asked them if they would be willing to present. And unfortunately, due to their scheduling conflicts, we couldn't make that happen. But the assistant to the president and the director of the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, Mr. Doug Hosier, who also hosted our briefing call this morning at 3:00, said their team will not be able to join, unfortunately, as they have 2 governor meetings with the president must be going on today. The Assistant Secretary of Interior, Mr. Doug Dominich, shared some remarks that I would like to read to all of you guys now. Dear Speaker Tina, unfortunately, it would be difficult for me to participate as well. As you may know, most of the federal buildings are closed down and employees are working from home. Ordinarily, we would be honored to support you and the legislature and the governor as we work together through this terrible virus. As you are aware, in response to this challenge, President Trump immediately mobilized 42 separate federal agencies within 3 days of the governor's request. The president approved Guam's emergency declaration. He signed 3 significant bills passed by Congress, resulting in remarkable funding for Guam, including over $117 million in the Coronavirus Relief Fund, $54 million from the Department of Education to assist schools and children, over $12 million in technical assistance from my office, and additional through other agencies, especially to support hospitals and healthcare workers, and much more. That said, we are mostly concerned about the human cost of this tragedy. Our hearts go out to the families of the casualties of this disease on island, and we thank the hardworking care workers who are dealing with the 130 plus cases of COVID on the island. And also he noted about the deaths with the 5 from Guam and the 1 sailor. Finally, our thanks go out to the people of Guam for reaching out to help the sailors from the USS Theodore Roosevelt. This was an especially difficult thing to do, and your assistance will be remembered for a long time. We can win this fight if we fight together. Blessings, Doc Dominic, Assistant Secretary. Colleagues, I want to also say that I personally met with Rear Admiral Maloney yesterday afternoon, and he also repeatedly shared his thanks and appreciation to the people of Guam for our spirit of Inafamalik with regards to the USS Theodore Roosevelt. And he also mentioned that the commander of the United States Pacific Fleet, Admiral John Aquilino, has asked him to deliver his sincere appreciation to our community for stepping up to the plate for the Theodore Roosevelt. And during times like these, it truly takes partnership and teamwork to get the job done. And all of you who are here today, my colleagues in the administration, thank you for coming to the table. As with all other information briefings held in this committee, whether it be a dozen of Government of Guam agency directors to talk about the Guam buildup, Joint Region Marianas, or the insurance provider for the Government of Guam, all stakeholders are called to the table in one sincere attempt to get information that will be beneficial to our entire community of Guam. Given that, I assume this will be an ongoing topic of discussion And I am sure that this will be one of many, many opportunities for our two branches to come together and collaborate on a path forward. As with all information briefings, colleagues, I ask that all my colleagues here today submit any questions you may have after this presentation in writing to my office. And once we compile all the questions, I will transmit them to Mr. John Calvo Jr. and the administration will respond to this August body in writing. I have seen in the past, some of you may think that this is a deliberate plot to not be transparent, but let me be the first to point out that one of our colleagues here today, based on a previous informational briefing I hosted with the same format, submitted a grand total of 66 questions to the panel, and her questions with the answers have been transmitted to my office and has been posted on our website for months for anyone to access. And also for the record, the reason this is set up this way is to ensure that given the vast array of topics that will be discussed and the need for subject matter experts and my desire to facilitate getting you all the answers to any and all the questions that you may have, this is the most efficient and effective way to hold an informational briefing. I have taken it upon myself to organize this, and my goal is to get answers, to get you the answers, the people of Guam, the answers that they want to hear, and I want to commit to that and making sure that we as a community, we as the 35th Guam legislature and the administration, of course, is transparent to our people. And to the listening audience at home, as I mentioned earlier, my good colleague, and I must give her recognition for this, Senator Lee beat me with her 66 questions. I submitted 21 questions today, so please help me out and send your questions to my office. You can do so by emailing speaker@guamlegislature.org or call my office at 477-2520 or even via the Facebook and Instagram social media platforms. I say this because I'm sure that there are some young adults out there listening to this, and this is your government also, this is your future, and Titino wants to hear from you as well. So John, I want to let you know that I have a few follow-up questions that I will be transmitting based on the briefing call I had this morning with the White House. They mentioned, so that I can share with you, the Economic Development Authority under the U.S. Department of Commerce may have some programs that we can take advantage of with regards to the Guam Visitors Bureau. And I hope sometime soon, along with our tourism oversight chair, the good senator from Jonia, Senator Therese Salahi, that we can sit and talk about this with the Guam Visitors Authority Board. And I want to share with you, colleagues, that I've invited, of course, the acting chief of staff, Mr. Ed Burns, director of DOA, Lester Carson from BBMR director, David Diasola, thank you for being early. Daphne Shimizu from Director of Revenue and Taxation, Dr. Ricky Hernandez, the GITA Deputy Administrator, Director of Policy, Mr. Carlo Branch, and I understand the Guam State Clearinghouse Director is also in the house, Stephanie Flores, and to all of you here this morning, Undakula Sidus Masi for coming. And I'm now going to turn the floor to the Acting Chief of Staff, Mr. John Calvo, and I want to thank my colleagues. I know that was a long introduction, but I wanted to include in the briefing this morning the information I got from the White House briefing and the topics that I just shared with you so that we can get going with the administration. So, John, I turn the floor over to you, Mananasi Jules.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and Mananasi Jules. For the record, I have on our side, we have the the Deputy Administrator for the Guam Economic Development Authority, Dr. Ricky Hernandez, the Director of DOA, Mr. Ed Byrne, also the Director of BBMR, Mr. Lester Carlson, and the Director of the Department of Revenue and Taxation, Ms. Daphne Shimizu. Operating our quarantine facility is Ms. Rebecca Respicio and the Director of the Guam State Clearinghouse, Ms. Stephanie Flores. Thank you again for the opportunity, and hafide and good morning, Madam Speaker and members of Imene 35 na Legislature in Guahan. On March 15, the island woke up to the news of our first COVID positive cases. That same day, Italy reported a total of 24,747 confirmed cases, and their death toll rose 25% to 1,809. Deaths in Spain more than doubled in a day to 288, with the number of the infections near 8,000. New York had over 700 cases with 3 deaths. There were a total of 1,224 confirmed cases in California. Governor Newsom told state media that he had projected that 25.5 million Californians will be infected with the virus. Closer to home and our tourism source markets, South Korea reported 8,162 confirmed cases, with a total of 75 deaths. COVID-19 infections in Japan increased by 30 to 803. That was the world on March 15, just 2 months ago, when we confirmed our first cases. And that could have been Guam's reality. While each of these numbers is disturbing in their own right, statistics can be cold and often easy to ignore. In Spain, soldiers helping to fight the coronavirus pandemic found elderly patients in retirement homes abandoned, and in some cases, dead in their beds. In New York, funeral homes have been overwhelmed by the number of bodies due to COVID-19, and some have had to resort to storing them in U-Haul trucks. On March 23rd, the World Health Organization declared that the global COVID-19 pandemic was accelerating. Based on the data we had at that time, the initial model for Guam's COVID-19 cases projected a mass fatality of 3,000 people. By all accounts, we had a small window of opportunity to prevent that from happening. Knowing that our first cases were recent travels to the Philippines and that President Duterte issued an order on March 17 that effectively gave visitors to the Philippines just 3 days to vacate the country, we had to act quickly. Invoking her authority under the Public Health Emergency Act, Title 10, Chapter 19, Governor Leon Guerrero used her emergency purchasing power to obtain quarantine and isolation facilities. This was necessary to contain the virus and prevent the collapse of our healthcare system. Contrary to popular belief, this was necessary because the governor of Guam did not and does not have the legal authority to close down an FAA facility like the Guam International Airport Authority. While this is knowledge we understood early, on April 3rd, Governor Ige of Hawaii told state media that the FAA would not close down the federal airspace. From the outset, the governor spoke often of flattening the curve. Flattening the curve is not solely about reducing the number of infected cases. According to the experts in a pandemic, we must accept that some people will get infected. But infection alone is not the greatest danger. As COVID-19 has so clearly demonstrated, the danger comes from more people needing acute treatment than healthcare systems can handle. Put simply, if a hospital has 15 intensive care unit beds, but over 2,000 people are infected with COVID-19, and just 10% of them needed treatment in that hospital's intensive care unit, those 20 patients would need intensive care, but only 15 people would be able to avail. The longer the shortage persists, the greater the likelihood that the acute healthcare system collapses for all. No more ICU beds for COVID-19 patients, for stroke patients, for those suffering a heart attack or brain trauma from a major accident. COVID-19 overwhelms the system and people die. Every step we have taken, every course of action has been done with that in mind. Because of the nature of this virus, Governor Leon Guerrero assembled her physicians advisory group to offer advice relative to the appropriate medical response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We knew the importance of having scientific evidence and sound medical advice whenever we decided to implement a protective measure or lift restrictions. As part of all our efforts, all of the agencies worked with federal partners to ensure we received the supplies we needed in this battle. We began fit testing our first responders early on, and we made sure they never ran out of personal protective equipment and that all of our patients would have access to ventilators. Not once during this pandemic have we run out of those items. As we have learned from other countries, testing is a key component to beating this virus. We worked and continue to work with the CDC, HHS, and the World Health Organization to maintain a steady supply of test kits. But test kits do not necessarily stop the spread of the virus. Jurisdictions have many tests, but they do not have the results. Knowing this, we focused our efforts on targeting community-based testing aimed at our most vulnerable populations. The data has shown that all of our efforts have helped contain the spread. Knowing that the medical side was just half the battle, we took the appropriate steps to increase our law enforcement. We worked with the judiciary and all the agencies with public safety officers to expand law enforcement presence on our island. We also mobilized the Guam National Guard so they could offer support to public health and GPD to protect our community. The ultimate goal is to protect our hospitals and reduce the number of cases that require acute care. We must not forget that at the beginning of April, Guam had 20 COVID patients in the hospital, and that was already placing a strain on our healthcare system. When a crisis begins to clear, it is human nature to look back and judge the steps we have taken. In a free and open society, this is absolutely necessary. We accept that it is the legislature's role, and we respect that. We simply point out that exceptional emergencies require exceptional tools to deal with them. The governor did not invent these tools. They were given to her and every other governor who may face the same circumstances. This was the wisdom of your legislative predecessors. They understood that in a true public health emergency, traditional procurement or even emergency procurement may not be enough. As such, the Organic Act and the Public Health Emergency Act permitted the governor to move swiftly, save lives, and protect Guam. So far, COVID-19 has cost thousands of people their livelihoods, and it has cost 5 people their lives. We believe that any unbiased, independent third party will look at what we have done and realize that without the governor's strong leadership within the confines of law, Guam may have paid an even greater price. At the direction of the governor, I have assembled our department and agency heads to present on the various steps our administration has taken to prepare for, respond to, and control the spread of COVID-19. As we have stated time and time again, this is an unprecedented time in our history. However, I am confident that while we may not always agree on everything we have done, we can agree that our whole of government approach has positioned us for a stronger tomorrow. Because in everything we have done together. And Madam Speaker and members of the Guam Legislature, today we take this opportunity to present on the subject matters that the Speaker has requested. And again, I want to acknowledge our directors and agency heads who are present, both online and here at the Governor's office, to be with you this morning. And so I believe the slides will be on the screen.
Thank you, John. And before you proceed, I just want to acknowledge the presence of our Vice Speaker, Senator Talina, and Majority Leader Senator Talina Nelson, our Legislative Secretary, Senator Amanda Shelton, Senator Therese Terlahi, and also I see Senator Mary Torres. I want to thank all my colleagues who are here again this morning. Please proceed, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you can see on this slide, we'll begin with our title page, which is, of course, the Government of Guam's COVID-19 response in our presentation today to the Guam Legislature. The first topic is our timeline of events. On January 29, Public Health met with key agencies to discuss emergency protocols in the event a patient tests positive. Public Health and CDC begins regular meetings with healthcare providers to educate our community on the signs and the symptoms. On January 31st, Public Health and CDC briefed island leaders at the Homeland Security. The health alert cards were issued to the Guam International Airport, and we've done this in order to accommodate our passengers in different languages. On February 3rd, we did a video infographic, PSA, for our community to begin educating them on the COVID-19 virus. February 4th, the Guam Hotel Restaurant Association met with membership at the Guam Outrigger, which included, of course, the relative health agencies, as well as other panel members who were instrumental in being able to educate our community on the COVID-19 virus. February 5th, Public Health, the airport, and the Governor, Lieutenant Governor began an educational campaign again on the education of the COVID-19 virus. On February 7th, the Governor of Guam denied the entry request by the MS Westerdam. On the 17th, the Governor denied the request for the Hong Kong men's basketball national team to play under the FIBA League at the University of Guam. On February 18th, the GVB briefing for all GVB membership at the Lotte Hotel, again with our related health agencies, with the Guam International Airport, Customs, and the Guam Hotel Restaurant Association. On the 21st, the Guam International Airport began to procure thermal scanners to begin health checks for our passengers arriving and departing the airport. On the 26th, the Guam Department of Education prohibited any school-sponsored student or employee travel to any country with confirmed cases of COVID-19 outside of the United States. On the 27th, the Governor met with Rear Admiral John Manoni to discuss prevention and response planning efforts as a whole of government approach. On March 3rd, the Governor spoke with Vice President Pence via teleconference, which was the first of weekly meetings. The Department of Public Health and Social Services simultaneously began their pandemic plan review work session day one at the Pacific Star Hotel, which was, of course, just with the public health staff. On the March 4th, Public Health Pandemic Plan Review continued with session day two at the Pacific Star with all stakeholders. And then on the 5th, the Pandemic Plan Review continued with work session day three, where a tabletop exercise was also conducted, and the Governor was able to address the Guam Medical Association on the government's COVID-19 response. On March 9, the Governor met with business leaders to discuss the proposed economic mitigation plans, the temporary economic assistance and mitigation team, and the Guam plan was unveiled. In that plan, the 5-point plan was to assist individuals, families, and businesses on Guam impacted by the global effects of COVID-19. Some of those included the postponed payment of 40% of BPT due for a 90-day period. It covered the 100% of credit card fees assessed by the government of Guam. It offered small business loans with deferred payments, rebate a percentage of airline landing and apron fees, and requested for utility payment plans. On March 10th, the Department of Public Health lab received CDC test kits. Validation process began. And on March 11th, the certified nurse aides received training on thermal scanners to be deployed at the Guam International Airport. A GFD town hall was held for our frontline and first responders with Dr. Jolene Uggan of the Guam Memorial Hospital, the Department of Public Health and Social Services, as well as the Advisory Council approved the PUI criteria. On March 12th, the airport was equipped with 4 thermal scanners. Another GFD town hall was held with Dr. Jolene Uggan, the Department of Public Health. The Guam National Guard provided decon training to medical staff. And the Department of Public Health Professional Licensing Office also disseminated physicians alert. And that same day, the Governor met with clinicians, healthcare providers to discuss protocol supply. And later on that day, the Governor met with the Mayor's Council of Guam to provide an update on the government's COVID-19 response. On March 13, the governor's circular number 2020-08 was issued, and it was an advisory on government travel and leave, and the airport began screening passengers for temperatures. On March 14th, the governor issued Executive Order 2020-03, which declared a state of emergency for Guam. On March 15, the first 3 cases of COVID-19 in the territory were confirmed. All village-sponsored events and activities were suspended. Public senior centers were closed on March 18th. Or we gave the information that public senior centers would be closed on March 18th, a couple of days later. The Guam Memorial Hospital restricted its emergency department.
Okay, so we're gonna turn this down just for a second because all they're doing is patting themselves on the back. Good morning, I'm Troy Torres with Kandit News.
And I'm Johnny Rosario.
Yeah,
Good morning.
Your microphone?
It's right here. You can hear me.
It is May 14, Thursday. Thank you for joining us in our studios here in Tumon, Guam, for this play-by-play on the informational briefing that Speaker Tina Munya-Barnes' Committee on Public Accountability is hosting. And apparently at the table, at the Zoom table, are John Jr. Calvo, the governor's chief of staff. He's the person who is yapping right now and patting the administration on the back and forgetting some important milestones in this timeline as they pat themselves in the back. We might even see fireworks go off from Adelup later about the wonderful job that they've done, for themselves. Maybe they'll even have some champagne at Government House through their face masks that they'll wear. But also at the table,
They're $2 face masks.
$2 face. Yes, the blue and white ones.
Yes.
Correct.
Can I just say, while they're talking about all this good stuff, the people of Guam have called GPA and they are threatening disconnection already.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought they're giving a 6-month window.
They're not. I got messages from people because they're crying. They haven't received, not that they're crying, they have every right to be upset, okay?
Yeah.
When they call GPA to figure it out how they can pay their bills, they're telling them they have to pay it. Or lucky thing they called because they're going to start disconnecting.
When?
Just this morning.
No, when will they start disconnecting?
I didn't get the logistics.
We'll try to get Patty Long Diego on the line about that.
So just to let you know, while our government is sitting on millions of dollars, the checks are coming out slowly. We got word that only 10,000 checks were received by the post office. So everybody going, this administration is amazing.
They're outstanding.
Guys, if you're hungry, don't forget about the post is drive this morning. It runs on until 2 o'clock or until the food runs out. And trust me, believe me when I tell you, it will run out before 2 o'clock.
Oh, they're still on March 28th. The other people from the administration on the line are apparently Lester Carlson, the budget director, Ed Byrne, the cash director, Carlo Branch, the governor's staff assistant, and Stephanie Flores, the director of the Guam State Clearinghouse, which falls under the purview of the lieutenant governor. What we just learned, though, is that the senators are not going to be allowed to ask questions. And when I asked, what's his name, Chirag Bhojwani from the Speaker's office, why that is, apparently it was in the Speaker's very long introduction, and I wasn't really paying attention because I was getting bored listening to it. It is, and they say that with all information hearings that she conducts, she asks that her colleagues submit questions in writing, and that the people they ask questions of, they would get the information in writing, but this is a chance to give the quote-unquote subject matter experts the opportunity to present whatever, but all they're presenting is a pat on the back for themselves. They're not answering, they don't seem to be answering any questions right now. I don't know whether it's even worth our time to continue with this informational briefing, but there were 21 questions that the Speaker submitted. There's 66 questions that Senator Regine Lee submitted, so maybe there will be some answers to that today. I don't know. Let's see, Chirag says, it's a public forum, so whatever information we get, we make sure all of the media get it as well. That was our approach to this. If anyone wants the entire speech, let me know and I can send it. The answer to that would be no. Pretty much, President Trump told us we're getting $730 million, and we're wondering where it went. That's the goal of today. Okay, so maybe they will be asking at least those questions that the Speaker and Senator Regine Lee submitted. I don't know. Christine Flores says amazingly full of Lysol. Eric Aquaz says...
Well, the governor was on K57 this morning spewing her lies, talking about her wonderful relationship with the Democratic Party. And
yeah, but no one listens to K57.
No, I know, but this is what the governor said, that her and the Speaker have a wonderful relationship.
On April 10th,
I don't know.
Eric Aquaz says face masks that they bought for $100 per box. Yes, that they're forcing the Mayor's Council to use from an open purchase order to provide blue and white face masks to senior citizens, $100 a box. That Big Soap Tea from Royal Bigs is profiting off of. Those are face masks that sell for $19.99 a box that cost you less. You know, $29.88 a box at Benson. Teresa Garcia says, test everyone working at the airport, everyone there, test all incoming passengers with or without symptoms. You know, the part of the timeline that John Jr. Calvo missed was the video recording from the governor and lieutenant governor to our Asian tourist markets at the height of the Asian outbreaks of coronavirus. Good job there, Governor. Risa Ray says, disconnection, some of us aren't back to work yet.
Well, that's what they're telling the people.
Bernice Castro says, GPA is so full of shiz. Patty Bias says, should not disconnect because they said pay on or before May 30th. So I would suggest call GPA. And if they tell you that you're going to be disconnected, maybe ask to speak to somebody else. And we'll try to get Patty Long Diego on the line today about it.
This public health emergency to the legislature.
Martina Cruz says the governor did not declare that Guam is COVID-19 clear. Well, you don't want her to declare that because the following day we'll probably have a COVID-19 infection, just like when she said that we are dengue free, and then one day later we have dengue.
Well, I really think our government is fudging the numbers.
John Michael Beneventi says, on March 29, I was furloughed. On April 2, I learned how to perfect my garlic butter steak. On April 3, I hit level 155 in Call of Duty.
I love it.
Do let me know if you would like more on my informational briefing. Probably more entertaining than John Boy.
Good one.
Mary Lanis says the timeline mainly shows that they've been getting an education on COVID-19. The only thing that was done effectively was canceling off-island sport events. Very good eye there, Mary. Rita Arceo says, tell Lou to pay disconnection for all the lies and promises to the people of Guam. The Republican senators are messaging me now, telling me that this informational briefing is not what they signed up for. They want to ask tough questions, and they're upset that the Speaker's office is not allowing them to ask tough questions to the administration officials. And really, it's not every... I wonder if, as a condition of appearing at this informational briefing, the administration official says, just as long as the senators are not allowed to ask us questions live. That's just talk about not being transparent.
That's why everybody is appearing.
I want to write to Donald Trump on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, he might respond. Yeah.
I want to write to him and ask him, could you please help us out here?
Say, can you get rid of our Democrat governor? Make sure you say Democrat.
Okay. I'm going to write to him today. I'll tag everybody.
Jesus Napati says, hi, good morning, Troy and Johnny. Any word on the petition? You know, that's been... I was supposed to write the letter to the Guam Election Commission this past weekend to get the petition for recall. It's just that I don't know if we'll be successful, and I don't know if I want to start something that is going to take so much effort. We have to get tens of thousands of signatures in order to trigger a recall election, and that's a lot of work. We do not have a lot of human resources here at Kandit. It requires us to go to high volume places, and those just don't exist right now. Even if the malls are open, it's not like there's a bunch of people, and I don't even think we would be allowed to do something like that at a time like this. It would require a lot of door-to-door interaction. I mean, if we had 100 volunteers who said that they would take the petition around, then maybe, because each of those 100 volunteers would have to get maybe 200 signatures in order to, and this is, you have to be a registered voter to sign this, and so that's a whole other issue. I want to let me think about it more. Maybe send me your comments. I'm getting a message. I don't see in John Jr. Calvo's presentation the date that they took down the GVB videos. Let me just.
Yes, at this time I know that you guys want to do a presentation, so I'm going to.
Oh, presentation! Another presentation.
I'm just hoping that the MIS team here has uploaded.
Sorry, I'm restarting the stream.
Is it too much? It's messed up. Let me get off the Wi-Fi.
Margaret Cepeda says, "Hi guys, keep on keeping on, listening on here in Illinois." Thank you, Margaret. Tiana Rasmussen says, "Arrest Lou and her cabinet members." I agree. Marvin Martinez says, "They don't mute each other." Dave Dueña says, "In 2020, vote smart." Dave is actually a candidate for senator on the Democratic ballot.
Can you see what's happening?
Brad Hewitt says, "Pay attention to the Wisconsin Supreme Court." I think they just ruled against their governor, right? Is that what that was breaking news today? Andy St. Nicholas says, "Where's Janella with her mute button?" I think she's trying to clean up a personal mess of hers. Lots Guam says, "The speaker and Lou, Bank of Guam connection." Mana Silva, my favorite and most beautifulest cousin in the whole wide world, says, "Patty Long Diego told the point today they are extending the no disconnect policy for the duration of the governor's emergency declaration." So why would they tell people that maybe the customer service person, get out, they're in a recess in an informational briefing? Can we just show the people this? This just showed up. I've never heard of this before. They recessed an a virtual informational briefing. This is something else. Rebecca is on now? Hold on.
I saw her.
Hold on, let me just, because I'm asking, if Rebecca is on now, why is it recessed?
Take a picture and send it.
Or maybe it's not all the way. No, it is. He says that they're back.
Just slide it, Troy, so that you can make sure.
It's all the way at the 0. See? And this is a new stream. Apparently Rebecca Respicio is talking right now, but we can't see. It says they're currently in recess. Let's see.
Oh, that's what I'm getting to on my phone.
Recess?
Currently in recess. Cat Cruz says, "What worries me is that the virus is mutating in the States and who knows where else, and the government wants to reopen." Lots Guam says, "What happened to dengue?" It's still around, apparently.
Yeah, there was a positive case in February.
Yeah, right? There's probably been positive cases and they're just not saying anything.
Yeah, they're back.
People could be traveling or being out in the community, or they could have the virus without feeling symptoms. Quarantine helps limit further spread of COVID-19.
Oh, reading from a
The
speech.
mandatory quarantine is applied unless the traveler possesses either a health care recognized and certified document that attests he or she is not infected with COVID-19 within the last 72 hours, or a secure COVID-19 test within 72 hours
This is
prior
Rebecca
to arrival
Respicio.
on Guam, and present negative results for entry into Guam. Any and all travelers arriving within these credentials will be subject, without these credentials, will be subject to mandatory quarantine. So on the screen, you can see a basic flow chart of what our management of persons in quarantine facilities, and every time I say QFAC, that will refer to our quarantine facilities. So basically, it starts out with a person travels into Guam, is screened at the airport, and if they meet the criteria they have to meet the criteria to be quarantined at our QFAC. And again, the criteria basically means that they didn't present the necessary COVID negative test. Passenger is then transported from the airport to the quarantine facility. The passenger is checked into a room at the QFAC for 14 days. Passenger receives 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner daily. Medical staff conduct screening with passengers twice daily. So does the passenger experience any COVID-19 symptoms? If the answer is yes, the passenger is tested for COVID-19. If they do have a positive result, the passenger is transferred to the isolation facility for medical treatment. If they have a negative result, the passenger remains at the QFAC and will continue to be monitored by medical staff. Passenger may be retested. If retest result is negative, passenger will be released on the 14th day. Now, if the passenger does not experience any COVID-19 symptoms, then the passenger basically completes quarantine and is released from the QFAC on the 14th day. There's other services that we do provide at the QFAC, and so does the passenger possess any mental health concerns? If the answer is yes, the passenger will receive counseling from behavioral health workers. Whether or not the passenger exhibits any mental health concerns, they still will be released from the QFAC within the 14 days, after the 14 day. Does the passenger have any existing medical issues? If the answer is yes, the medical staff will conduct health assessments on the passenger. Depending on the medical condition, medical staff will make recommendation to either transfer passenger to the hospital or have he or she self-quarantine at home, and I'll explain that process a little bit later. Public health will follow up with the passenger until 14-day period is completed if they are self-quarantining at home. If the passenger does not have any existing medical issues, then the passenger still completes the quarantine and is released from the QFAC on the 14th day. That basically is just a basic flow chart of the QFAC management of a person in our facility. The period of quarantine, the quarantine period for COVID-19 exposure is 14 days from the time the passenger's arrival date into the island. If the passenger remains well during the period of quarantine, they will be released on the 14th day. Alternatives may be considered on a case-by-case basis, where travelers may complete part of their quarantine at home after a health assessment and or negative testing and approval from the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Persons in quarantine will be monitored regularly. Those who develop symptoms will meet the person under investigation criteria. They will be tested and managed appropriately. People who test positives will be transferred to the hospital or isolation facility immediately. Operation of the quarantine facility is a 24-hour facility operated by the government of Guam. The original sites that were identified as a quarantine facility included the Guam Wyndham Hotel, Days Inn, and Santa Fe Hotel. However, on March 23rd, 2020, passengers from Santa Fe Hotel and Days Inn were transferred to the Pacific Star Hotel. And on April 7, 2020, passengers from Wyndham Hotel were moved to the Pacific Star Hotel. The Pacific Star Hotel is the current quarantine facility. Passengers are not allowed to leave their room at any time. If passengers have any concerns, they must contact front desk. They will receive three meals daily. We do have a schedule for all those meals, and our goal is to remain on time for the breakfast, lunch, and dinner service. Passengers are allowed to receive items from friends and family on the outside. These items include, but are not limited to, food, drinks, clothing, blankets, hygiene products, etc. Delivery of these items are accepted daily within the hours of 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Meals and dropped-off items will be delivered by the QFAC staff. All individuals entering the QFAC must be cleared by security. Only QFAC personnel, designated public health and medical workers, hotel staff, and security are authorized in the QFAC facility. Unauthorized persons are prohibited to enter the facility. Now I'm going to talk about the quarantine personnel and our duties and responsibilities. So as you're aware, I am the QFAC coordinator. And so the QFAC coordinator is the overall lead person responsible for managing the activities at the QFAC. The coordinator's duties include, but are not limited to, managing the command center. This is where we handle all the incoming and outgoing phone calls, as well as all the other logistics associated with our QFAC. Address passenger requests for room needs, communicate with outside security regarding all movement, arrange transport for passengers, appointments, and transfers, as well as transiting passengers back to the airport, coordinate military releases upon command verification, work with various ship vessel agents for quarantine crew members, communicate passenger needs with other on-site professional staff from Healthcare Services of Pacific lead nurse, our Public Health and Social Services CDC team, the assigned social workers, and our mental health lead, for which we do have Major Tom Babauta with the Guard, who is also a mental health professional. Part of our responsibilities also include that I answer all questions regarding the quarantine facility process or direct questions to the proper authority, direct staff for the deliveries and needs to arrange changes, arrange meals for new passengers upon arrival, arrange for translators for non-English speaking passengers, receive travel confirmations and verifications as needed, prepare and finalize end of day summary report, which needs to get out to, which is the complete data and counts, which is sent to the medical team, public health, the Guam Homeland Security, the governor's office, and all concerned. Communicate any additional needs with the hotel manager and all other duties that basically require action. Then we have an administrative post. That staff is responsible for accountability of all passenger accounts, updating all listings and making sure they are accurate, the tracking of all 14-day auto releases. So when I use the term auto release, it's just our term at the QFAC. That means they've completed their cycle. Meal tags on all occupied rooms, meal charts for meal distribution, meal lists to the chef with accurate special diets and allergies as identified by all passengers. We track room issues for maintenance reporting, daily list of dirty rooms ready to be cleaned based on the CDC guidelines, maintain records of transfers, military releases, hospitalizations, appointments, etc., and records of incoming and outgoing passengers. Then we have our quarantine service personnel, and they are responsible for the following tasks. They deliver the meals, the breakfast, lunch, and dinner to all passengers in the rooms, conduct meal counts to ensure the chef prepared required order, separate and account for all floors based on passengers per floor. They ensure all dietary and allergy meals for specified rooms are accurate. They address passenger calls about any meal concerns, comments, additional water requests. They disinfect everything along the way. They deliver all incoming items from the outside to every single room that it is labeled to be delivered to. They address passenger calls, passenger needs about any pending deliveries, any other issues that needs to be brought to the QFAC coordinator's attention. And they basically assist with everything and anything that needs to be done on the daily. We do have
So
two
basically,
staff that are located
these guys are dorm managers. I'm gonna come off with the Becky Respicio thing real quick because this is just a bunch of BS. What I recognize about this kind of explanation is this is the list of things that you put down to anything and everything, and you explain it in an officious way with an officious tone of voice, so that it sounds like it's very important stuff and that they're very busy. But what she's explaining are the roles of those when you're in college and you stay at a dorm, and there's a it's not even the resident manager, it's the other student who's like an upperclassman who stays on the floor and is the person in charge of that floor. That's what she's explaining are the roles of these cabinet officials and Adaloop staffers who make anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 and have been earning accruing hourly pay above 40 hours a week. So of course their pay now for the year is going to be more than $50,000 to $100,000 a year, as they've displaced housekeeping staff who would normally do this stuff at the hotels, who make $8.75 an hour to $10 an hour, and You just heard Rebecca Respicio admit that her staff, the government of Guam cabinet officials, and Adelup staffers are the ones delivering the food, doing the head count for the number of plates that are delivered to each room, when clearly the contract for Pacific Star Hotel, at least, says that that's the PacStar's responsibility. So it's like the people of Guam are double paying for this service. Let's get back to her speech to the legislature.
And the needs that arise. Two are located at the roadway entrance and another in the front of the building, or the other two in the front of the building. Security officers at the roadway entrance will screen and clear persons prior to driving onto the grounds of the facility. Officers situated in the front, in front of the building will screen, clear, and record person name entering facility. Unauthorized persons will be asked to leave the facility. Security officers will also accept items that are delivered for the passengers. So they are the first ones who actually meet the family members who are dropping items for their family members. Officers will also ensure items are labeled with the passenger name and room number. And from there, it is our QFAC staff that make those deliveries. When it comes to processing passengers, let's talk about the preparation for incoming flight arrivals. Once a flight arrival time is confirmed by the airport, the QFAC personnel perform general sanitation of the lobby area and transit bay area. A list of available rooms and bed types are printed. Room checks are done to ensure they are cleaned, unlocked, and left open. Power cards are also inserted to every room so that the room is basically ready to be occupied. When the arrival is announced by the QFAC airport team, the information does also include the passenger count, dietary and medical needs, and other notes. Our staff is responsible for getting the luggage carts positioned outside. Meal carts are prepared with meal options available. The buses will then arrive and passengers are instructed to enter and line up for check-in. We do have the entire lobby marked off with the 6 feet separations, and that's a tape on the floor just to ensure safety and social distancing. Rooms are then assigned. Passengers will sit, they'll wait for the briefing of all guidelines, rules. We let them know about the schedule, things that they're allowed to bring in from the outside. And we also allow them to ask some questions and get them the answers that they do need. Then we wait for the luggages. Luggages are transported by the DPW staff. When luggages are loaded outside, QFAC staff bring it inside and line it up for the passengers. Passengers are instructed to get their bags and line up towards the elevator. Meals are handed out to them. Passengers proceed to their assigned floor. Staff are always on the floor to ensure that they enter the correct room. Staff provides assistance with luggages to rooms as needed. Staff also assists with 88 passengers in wheelchairs, making sure that they do get safely transported into their room. After a passenger is secured in the room, the QFAC personnel can be cleared, and because we do ask them to stay until the very last flight, at least for the evening shifts. And then we ask one staff to just stay behind just in case, a passenger is not satisfied with their room and we have to make major room changes or constant room changes, which really does happen on the daily. And we're talking about 11 p.m., 12 midnight, 1 in the morning at this time because of how long it takes to clear all the flights. We do meal tags on the doors so that when meals are delivered, it's easily identified how many meals or what their dietary restrictions are. So that has to go up every night before the operations begin the next day. Then the QFAC coordinator will communicate with the lead nurse on any urgent medical evaluations needed. We tend to the expected requests and concerns from passengers, await for administrative updates, and then prepare for the end of day report for distribution, as I indicated earlier in the flow chart. We also have health screenings, as we talked about, and basically the nurses do provide health screenings twice a day. It's typically because they do get their first screening at the airport, they don't get screened when they come. But the next day they will get their temperature checks, and those that are displaying symptoms will be seen more often than others. And those that are not displaying any symptoms are sometimes just would get one temperature check and then a follow-up phone call, like in the afternoon, just to ask them how they're feeling and if there's any changes to their health. Let's talk a little bit about COVID-19 testing while in the facility. Passengers with symptoms of potential COVID-19 infection, such as fever, cough, shortness of breath, chills, muscle pain, new loss of taste or smell, vomiting or diarrhea, and or sore throat, will be recommended to be tested for coronavirus. A health worker will submit a request from DPHSS and the passenger to be tested, or for the passenger to be tested. If the test result is positive, the passenger will immediately be transferred to the isolation facility to receive appropriate treatment. If the test result is negative, the passenger will remain at the QFAC and complete their 14-day quarantine. The passenger will remain at the QFAC and will continue to be monitored and receive daily health screenings. We offer at the facility counseling services for passengers. Behavioral and mental health workers will provide counseling to passengers experiencing PTSD, stress, depression, anxiety, grief, and other mental health concerns. The lead staff makes recommendation to the medical review team in the event that the quarantine period is not conducive to the mental health needs of the passenger. So we do address this on the daily. Departure time, or when a passenger completes their 14-day quarantine, just to paint the picture, the departure time is determined by the flight arrival time. As an example, if they came in on a 7 p.m. Hawaii flight, then Hawaii flight arrival will mean a 7 p.m. release time on the 14th day. Release times could be changed according to public health. They'll allow for a 3 to 4 hour period of change just based on the scheduling of any incoming flights. We want to make sure that outgoing passengers are not interacting or being in the lobby at the same time that we do have new incoming passengers. So safety is our priority. Just want to paint the picture. The night before a departure takes place, we do give departure surveys under all the doors of those that are scheduled for release. Then we collect them in the morning and we evaluate whether or not they have reliable transportation home. If they don't, we do make those arrangements with DPW Transport to take them to their residence. Again, they've completed the 14-day at this time. And then we also manage and collect their luggages ahead of time just to allow for a more efficient departure process so that they're not crowding in the lobby and that everything is in order. The departure typically with a 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. departure, passengers are told to just put on their masks. Please practice social distancing. They are told to only enter the elevators one room at a time. And then they proceed to the lobby, for which they are given their discharge papers, which is a clearance of 14-day quarantine from the Department of Public Health. And they basically wait in the lobby for their ride, but most of the time their ride is already there waiting for them. Now, Senators, I just want to point out that there are different programs that are in the QFAC, that exist in the QFAC facility, including what's called an early passenger release, meaning they are not there for all 14 days, but we call it a medical transfer to home quarantine. So passengers that are released under the 14 days is on a case-by-case basis and must be approved by Public Health and Social Services. Reasons for early release, but not limited to, are pre-existing medical conditions, pre-existing mental health conditions. They may be in a fragile state, like the elderly, those that have high-risk pregnancies, pregnancies with complications, etc. We have passengers that have family members that they came back for because they have a terminal illness, meaning they're already in the hospital receiving critical care, or they are officially under hospice care. We have passengers that fly back to Guam because there's a death in their family and they're here to attend the viewing or funeral. And we also have case-by-case identified needs that are not specific to what I just mentioned. But prior to a medical transfer to home quarantine, the home must be suitable for self-quarantine, and passengers must have the resources to have their needs met without leaving their home for the remainder days. So in other words, they may be transferred out for home quarantine, but they are still monitored up to the 14 days as if they were in the facility. So Public Health does have that responsibility, and the passenger also commits to their end of the responsibility. Then we have early releases of military personnel. We call that the military transfer to base quarantine. If a DoD passenger and or a DoD dependent may be released before completing the 14 days upon receipt of official documentation from the command that represents his or her branch of service. An authorized representative, which is a uniformed personnel, is required to provide transport from the quarantine facility to the designated military home or facility assigned. I'm going to talk about the laundry and linen service. So currently at the Pacific Star, there are no laundry services for personal clothing during their 14-day quarantine. Passengers may hand wash their personal garments in the room. We make these announcements upon their arrival, and we also let them know what has been working for the previous passengers.
Hand washing?
Sorry, my throat is so dry from talking.
Can they provide a washer and a dryer?
So passengers are all provided with clean linen. Sorry, somebody's going to pass me our water. Just give me a second. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Wow.
So clean linen is provided in every room, including bed sheets.
Sometimes it's stained.
Extra towels, and linens will be washed once a week. Passengers must bag their used linens, and thank you. Everybody's so good here. They have to bag it and place it outside their room. Clean linens will be provided to the passenger's room upon request. So passengers can either ask for new linens, but they are required to change the bedding themselves because nobody can enter the room. Okay, so that's an understanding that we announced to all of the passengers. And we also make sure that we manage expectations by, giving them the reality of their stay while they're in the quarantine facility. And again, this is a draft SOP, and senators, the reason it is still in draft form is just because it has never been created prior to this event. And every day something new comes up and it's different, and we are working, it's a work in progress, and we learn more every day, and we are committed to just making sure that the final SOP will contain everything and anything that is needed. Hopefully we never have to go through anything like this again, but we are making sure that this SOP, when it's final, is going to
earn your money, Rebecca.
help us move further along in the future if needed. Oh, I'll just also add that currently, just for everybody's information, we do have on a pool of staff of 28 personnel. And the shifts do vary for different times of the day, but the most staff that is needed is typically in the evening because that's when we have departures and the incoming flights and the deliveries. And our current PAX at the Pacific Star, we have 256 passengers occupying 185 rooms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Like I stated earlier, and the introduction for the quarantine facilities and isolation facilities. The question might come up, why the quarantine facilities? And so the use of the quarantine facility was, again, an early decision by the administration, by the governor, to immediately begin the containment of COVID-19 cases and the spread here on our island, knowing that our early cases of COVID-19 came from the Philippines. And so again, the quarantine facilities is a tool for us, a mitigation tool. And perhaps the question might come up, well, why don't you increase your testing capacity? At the onset of using the quarantine facilities, we did not have a robust testing capacity. There was a shortage throughout the nation, throughout the world, quite frankly. And so again, this tool was available to us, and so we used it. And so currently, as we continue to increase testing capacity, that is an option for us. And those plans will continue to be reviewed by the Physicians Advisory Group. Additionally, I know Rebecca basically explained the entire process, standard operating procedures, and the information concerning the arrival of passengers all the way up to their stay and release at the quarantine facilities. I am pleased to note and recognize our entire team, because even the Department of Defense has utilized our model for the sailors that arrived on the USS Theodore Roosevelt for their quarantine sites at
has nothing to do with the federal
that
government.
they have designated when they were quarantined in Tumon. So again, our work with the quarantine facilities, our standard operating procedures, helped the Department of Defense, and now we essentially have paved the way for some of the control and mitigation efforts in containing COVID-19. If we can proceed to the next slide, at this time I'd like to discuss the COVID-19 budget under the CARES Act, and next slide. Throughout Crystal, can you move the screen thing there? To assist the states and the territories, the federal government has directed money in direct aid to Guam under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, also known as the CARES Act. And as part of the CARES Act, Guam received $117 million, and that the budget for the CARES Act funding, it was really 117.9 to be exact. The budget for the CARES Act funding was developed based on the United States Department of Treasury's guidance for state, territorial, local, and tribal governments that was issued on April 22nd. This budget was submitted to the Guam legislature on May 5th, and I am now pleased to yield the floor to our Director of the Department of Budget, Mr. Lester Carlson.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to draw the attention of everybody watching to...
Here's Lester the liar.
A submittal that we provided to the Speaker's office yesterday. On May 8th, Senator Kelly Marsh wrote to the governor asking for some information on the development of the CARES Act budget. Specifically, she was talking and wanted information on agencies under her oversight committee and how their needs were addressed. So what we decided to do, because a similar request was made during the Special Economic Service meeting last week by Senator Sabina Perez, for the entirety of the responses from agencies to BBMR's request for costs and future expenditure needs from the different both line agencies as well as executive agencies, to include the judiciary and the legislature. So instead of just being able to address Senator Marsh's question, the governor prepared a response which went out yesterday, May 13th. And if I guess I'm gonna get dry mouth too, so might as well read it. Off-a-day, Senator Marsh, this is in response to your letter of May 8th seeking clarification for CARES Act funding for oversight agencies. I understand that you would like an explanation of how the $117.9 million received under the CARES Act was allocated and prioritized for essential and non-essential government entities and the guidelines used in determining the true needs of the agencies concerned. As was noted in my transmittal letter to the Speaker relative to the CARES Act budget, I had directed the Bureau of Budget and Management Research in coordination with the fiscal management team to develop a budget for the CARES Act funding. In this regard, BBMR on April 27th had contacted the various executive, line, and semi-autonomous departments and agencies to include the legislature and the judiciary for information targeted towards COVID-19 response expenses and recovery needs. Such contact was conducted via email, correspondence, and a follow-up through telephonic communication with the various points of contact for those departments and agencies and entities previously noted. A copy of the U.S. Department of Treasury's guidance for state, territorial, local, and tribal governments that was issued on April 22nd was also provided as an attachment for the departments and agencies to review and be guided accordingly. As part of this request for information, BBMR emphasized to the departments and agencies that their input must follow the guidelines on eligible expenses that any COVID-19 expenditures and expenses are for the period from March 14th onward, and specifically that the guidance excluded expenditures for those items already included in its approved fiscal year budget. BBMR also emphasized that departments cannot double dip, whereas only one federal fund source is to be charged in order to eliminate duplicate expenses under the Coronavirus Relief Fund and also for future audit purposes. A deadline of April 29th was given for all agencies' responses to be considered. Again, this was an effort to be able to provide a budget for submission and review, ultimately approval by the governor. So we did have timeframes under which we were requested to put this together. BBMR then compiled and reviewed these responses and separated all eligible costs based on the breakdown outlined in the guidance for non-exclusive examples. Non-exclusive examples of eligible expenditures. In other words, if something came in and it was obviously an ineligible expense, we made the downward adjustment. The development of the CARES Act funding is primarily based on input as provided by the various government entities, whether essential or non-essential. Thus, this includes the budgets for those departments and agencies under your oversight authority. This letter from Governor Leon Guerrero is addressed to Senator Marsh. In an effort to be transparent, the various communications between BBMR and the government entities, including those under your purview related to their COVID-19 expenditures and expenses, are attached as Exhibit A. This is Exhibit A. This was requested again by Senator Sabina Perez. It contains all of my staff's first request for information and any follow-ups, and it also has the agency's responses. So this was submitted as part of a 3-attachment correspondence that went to the Speaker, Senator Marsh, and Senator St. Augustine yesterday afternoon. In addition, the governor also provided an Exhibit B, which is a listing of all federal stimulus and assistance programs that the government of Guam has received and expects to receive in the coming days. The governor concludes her letter by stating, "It is my hope that I provided you the requested clarification on the formulation of the CARES Act budget. Please be assured that I will continue to provide updated information as it becomes available to the general public relative to COVID-19. Again, this is signed by Governor Leon Guerrero in a letter to Senator Marsh yesterday. I would now like to draw your attention to Exhibit B, noting that this is an evolving process, and we were trying to get the information as succinctly out as possible. But I will note that in yesterday's transmission to the legislature, we did make a transposition error. On page 404, item 27, the election commission, the amount should be 600,000 as opposed to 60,000. That will take your estimated amount up by another 540,000. And that results in a cumulative total of $1,320,751,618, with $560,073,381 received by the government of Guam to date. The spreadsheet is broken out, and this is a collaborative and evolving exercise between the Guam State Clearinghouse and BBMR to be able to capture and make available all the funding sources that we are looking at receiving through the current authorization, and there's discussion about another stimulus. As soon as that becomes law and we have greater details, we will certainly provide that to the public and the legislature as well, simultaneously. The breakdown of the spreadsheet in Exhibit B has the department, that is the recipient, the federal grantor, a description of the use of the funding, the estimated amount that is expected to be received. The next column is the actual amount received to date. And then some comments with respect to where things currently are. So the first item as an example was that very early on, the Department of Interior reached out to the governor and said, we have TAP grant money available for you. You don't have to go through the normal application process, just respond to this. And upon receipt of your response, we will earmark what ended up to be $12 million in technical assistance program grant funding for Guam. So you will see that the amount is $12,039,565. We're going to be drawing down that amount. We have to put a plan together as a prerequisite for drawdowns. The first prerequisite was to provide a copy of the pandemic plan to the Department of Interior, and that was done last week. We are in the process of beginning to look at how we're going to apply the $12 million under this TAP grant. It is primarily used for assistance related to response to certain situations, more technical than it is programmatic. So in other words, if you need a recovery plan to be put together, the funding for consultant services will be provided. The result of the consultant services engagement should be a blueprint for how to proceed and should include funding requirements and things of that nature. So that is a traditional use of the TAP grant money. Whereas when you go down the line, you'll see various grants for various programs. And we have a listing here subject to change because the amounts actually are, thankfully, are going up. But we have 28 items under the heading of federal assistance estimates for executive branch departments and agencies. We have another 6 items that are federal assistance estimates for autonomous and semi-autonomous agencies. And again, I'll draw your attention again to page 4. There was a transposition error. So the Election Commission, the amount is $600,000, not $60,000. So in response to the agenda items sent by the speaker, this is a 2-part plan or 2-part response. The first one is dealing with the Government of Guam response plan to combat COVID, which has a category and a topic that I'm touching on now. How the $117.9 million budget was allocated and prioritized. So we've provided that in the governor's response to Senator Marsh. But I'm also jumping, sorry, but on the second page, support received from the Trump administration in response to COVID-19. The speaker has several dollar amounts for different programs. We decided that we would provide a more detailed response, not just to what the speaker had sent along, but more comprehensive in a true effort to enlighten both the public and the legislature. So there's a lot of information here. It was sent yesterday afternoon. I'm very hopeful that the legislature and I understand the Speaker's office also posted this information on their website, that everybody gets a chance to take a look at it, especially the Exhibit B information. It does give a wealth of information on what funding source, where the recipient agency is, and a description of the use of the money. I will be sending an update probably at the conclusion of this informational briefing, as we did actually As I said, it's an evolving process. We have even more information to provide to Exhibit B. So I'll send an updated Exhibit B at the conclusion of this informational briefing. I'll direct it to the speaker for dissemination accordingly, and I'm sure all this information will end up being on the recovery website and the governor's website for even broader accessibility to the public. I think, sir, that takes care of that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Lester. As he noted, we did go back.
So this is how this whole thing works. There are 21 questions that Speaker Barnes gave to the administration officials prior to this hearing. What they're answering now, in their own words, with their own truth, are these 21 questions. I asked the Speaker's office whether any of those questions included the $849.40 laptop bag so that Lester could address it. Apparently not, unless Lester just decided to ignore the question, because he said nothing in that whole COVID-19 budget thing about the outrageous spending plan that the governor has for $117 million, nearly $118 million in federal CARES Act funding for, we never even finished our stories on that. So there's a whole bunch of really dumb stuff in that. So, you know what? We're not going to get anything from this informational briefing. Plus, I just made fried rice and I really want to finish it. So we're going to get off.
Oh, wait. The Social Security, things that do matter. The Social Security office is not open to the public, but there is a 800 number for the Guam office. So this is the phone number in case any of you need to get a hold of the Social Security office. They will answer. It is 1-855-616-6393. Sorry, again, 855-616-6393. That is the Social Security office, the local Social Security office. If you have any questions, I also believe they are taking applications, but you do have to mail it in. They are still working over there at the office, but it's not open to the public. The address to send your documents in is, I wrote this down, 770 E Sunset Boulevard, Suite 155, Barragata, Guam, 96921. That is the Guam local Social Security office. The phone number, again, for people who need to get a hold of someone at the Social Security office is 855-616-6393. They're answering their phones, and they'll help you in any way they can.
Cool. Thank you for getting that. For Kandit, until later, I'm Troy Torres.
And I'm Johnny Rosario.
Have a good day.